Okay, so it's Saturday night, and this is a Sorrow Eternal special. It was too big for me to add in last Sunday, so I'm going to go on my own here. And let's talk about some bands who released albums, and either you liked the band before, and after the new album you didn't, or you didn't like the band, and now you do. Or even if it just changed your general opinion. There were a couple I wanted to mention in particular, and I'm going to culminate with an album that my review is coming for. Back to that later. So anyway, earlier this year, I had a review for the latest album from Omnium Gatherum. Now, they are a modern melodic death metal band. I own most of their stuff, but I never thought they were really anything more than just kind of run-of-the-mill generic melodic death band. And they hadn't really done anything that would have made me go, oh my god, you gotta check them out. So when the new album comes out, it's called Beyond. I'm thinking, yeah, it's probably okay. I'm not really sold on it. It is what it is. But they absolutely changed my mind because they did things on this album that melodic death bands haven't done. And I don't necessarily know that it's because they're original or if they're just that good at what they do at this point. Some of my favorite melodic death bands, Insomnium, bands like that, pale in comparison to what Omnium Gatherum accomplished on this album. They hit a melodic death ballad, which was amazing. And I think that the biggest surprise on the album, usually when you listen to an album all the way through, you pick out your favorite song, the song that stands out from the rest of them, and then you want to continually go back to that one. But on this album, as I listened to it, the first time through, it was like, wow, that song's good. And then the second time through, it was like, actually, that next song's better. And it kind of culminated in me realizing that every song is perfect. There is nothing about this album that I don't like. And it's impossible for me to tell you which song is my favorite, because my favorite song is the one that I'm listening to at that moment. So as I'm listening to track 1, I'm going, okay, this is my favorite song. Then track 2 comes on. Oh man, but this one's awesome. And it's impossible to narrow it down any further than that. It got to the point where I get to the final song, which is called White Palace, and it's 10 minutes of just pure awesome. And I couldn't stop listening to the album. I mean, it was days on end listening to this album. And I think that now there are parts of me that think Omnium Gatherum might be the leading band in the melodic death scene. I mean, obviously that'll be determined to see, who comes out with whatever else. But they changed my mind big time. They went from, somewhere in the middle of the mediocre pack to being the leader of the pack. So I wanted to mention them first and foremost. Now, on the flip side of that, we have Stratovarius, who I didn't review the latest Stratovarius album. That went to Brian. But even Brian, who is a huge Stratovarius fan, one of the biggest that I know, hated the album. I think he gave it a 5 out of 10, which, oddly enough, I completely agree with. The album was boring. It just wasn't anything about it that had me on the edge of my seat as Stratovarius typically does. Now, if you remember, when their last album came out, Elysium, Justin had given that a 10 out of 10. That ended up on our top 10 list, and they absolutely knocked that one out of the park. I was thoroughly impressed with what they did on that one, but something just seems to have changed since then, and the album just came off as generic. It just seemed like they were just rewriting the same songs, and the lyrics were just drab and cliche. Not that they weren't before, but I don't know. Maybe it's something in the time or whatever went into the album, but they just didn't deliver this time. And it's to the point now where I find myself not really wanting to listen to anything in their catalog because I feel like there's bands out there doing more than they're doing. And maybe that's it. Maybe they were at the top so long that they got complacent. But Nemesis was definitely an album that changed my mind a bit on them. I'm not sold as them being the top of the heap for power metal anymore. Now, an album that changed my mind drastically is the new EP by the one-man band The Howling Void. Their previous album, I believe it was called Shadows Over the Cosmos, I did not like. The songs were too long, they were repetitive, they were boring, and the guy has an interesting concept, and then he's making doom metal, but symphonic inspired, so there's a lot of symphonics and keyboards in there, but if you're going to make a song 14 minutes long, there has to be variation there. And that's something that was sorely lacking on the previous album. He just didn't have any sort of variation, no lateral movement, nothing. So you have a 15-minute song that's basically the same guitar riff over and over. And that gets really tiresome really, really fast. So when the new EP came out, it's called Runa, I was apprehensive at first, and I wasn't even sure I really wanted to listen to it. And I'm really glad that I did, because I'm not going to say he changed his style. He didn't change his style. There's definitely a more focused effort on the symphonic elements, which I absolutely loved. But it's 2 songs that equal 17 minutes. So you're talking average 8.5 minutes, which is perfect, because it's not the same droning riffs. He changes it up. He really works back and forth. There's some up-tempo parts, some more down-tempo parts, and he just killed it. Absolutely killed it this time. And I thought that's actually, this is the EP that brought up this topic of, bands that change your mind, because you never want to write a band off. You never want to just say, you know what, screw it, they had a terrible album, I'll never listen again, because you really never know when they're going to come back and give you something that you were, desperately looking for. So I give all the credit in the world to Ryan and his Howling Void project for absolutely showing me up, and, he should be really fucking stoked about that, because that's, that says a lot. Then we have a very interesting new album, and this will culminate the discussion of this. And the review for this will be going up not this coming week, but the following week. Though I might move it around because I'm so excited about it. It's the new album by the band Ghost, who now in the North American territories is Ghost BC for legal issues. But their original album, Opus Eponymous, god damn it, now I can't even say it, didn't strike me. I had really no feeling on it whatsoever. But we saw them open the Opeth Mastodon Heritage Hunter tour, and I was impressed with the theatrics of their performance, but the music just seemed just wholly generic. They didn't seem to live up to the physical presence that they had. The band is made up of the Nameless Ghouls, who are basically, the band, and they don't have names, and they wear the druid robes when they play live, and then it's fronted by Papa Emeritus, who plays the Pope Cardinal role, which I thought was pretty awesome. The makeup and the costume, fucking fantastic. But the music didn't strike me. Now, I am fucking sold. Their new album comes out on the 16th. It's called Infestissimum. Oh, man, tongue-tied here, I guess. But it absolutely fucking blew me away. Because it's so interesting. It's so off the beaten path. It's so eclectic. There's stuff in there that sounds like fucking 70s love rock. There's some prog rock in there. I swear there's moments where you could, if you told someone it was the Beatles and they didn't know better, you could sell it as the Beatles. Because it's just so out there. It's absolutely fucking incredible how fucking far gone this shit is. And it's part trippy, part prog, and it's just absolutely amazing. The musicianship is fucking top notch. The keyboard work is amazing. But even more than that is I think they're now living up to the image that they've garnered, because the vocals fucking blew me away. It's all there's nothing more than it's clean vocals, but there's chanting and there's the whole religious aspect. But they take songs and they do them in such an ironic way where they have this like trippy love ballad, and the name of the song is "The Depth of Satan's Eyes." And the song lyrically is about finding the warm embrace of Satan, and I thought it was just an amazing way to deliver that message. I can't tell you enough how fucking sold I am on this band at this point. I will be picking this album up without a doubt the day it comes out. And should I get the opportunity to see them live again, I absolutely would, because I would love to see these songs played live by guys wearing druid robes and guy dressed up as the fucking Pope. I think that would be fucking hilarious and one of the best live experiences I could have. But, I'm sold. And again, I didn't like them at first. I was not sold by their live gigs. But I'm glad I listened, because if I hadn't, I would have missed out on this. So, take that for what it is. And, learn the lesson that I've been learning in 2 years on this site. And that's just don't rule anything out. Even the bands you absolutely fucking hate could end up being the bands that you love 2 or 3 years from now. And who knows? Maybe that other band, that awesome drooling gent band, will be my next favorite band. So there you go, guys. Be back with another podcast, picking up the albums in the last couple weeks, getting caught up on that. And make sure you check out these albums. Hopefully you feel the same way about them that I do. And if you don't, that's awesome too. But never write it off. Never give up. Never surrender. And just keep listening. Because you never fucking know. You just never know. And cut.